My introduction to this game, as with many in the PAL region, was in the form of its sequel. The year was 2000, I was a fresh-faced young man studying Viscom at Warwickshire College. One evening, my cousin came to my house with a brand new PlayStation game, Parasite Eve 2. I immediately fell in love with it and went out and bought my own copy, but the question remained, where was Parasite Eve 1? The answer was that unfortunately, it was never released at all in the PAL region. So now, 22 years later, with a little help from emulation, I tackle Parasite Eve. This game takes place in a superbly realised version of Manhattan on Christmas 1997. The story starts with our protagonist, Aya Bray, a rookie cop, arriving with her date to the opera at Carnegie Hall. During the performance, something strange happens with the operatic lead, Melissa, and she begins to immolate the crew, cast, and crowd with an unknown power. Aya is seemingly impervious to this power and can do little but look on as the rest of the crowd burst into flames in front of her. She rushes the stage to confront Melissa and find out what's going on, where she is told her cells are trying to communicate. After a short boss battle with her, Melissa escapes. Aya has a flashback about a girl in a hospital bed, which is reoccurring throughout the story. We follow Melissa into the backstage areas of Carnegie Hall, finding more charred corpses and mutated animals that really give off a John Carpenter's The Thing vibe, which is awesome. Reading Melissa's diary, we find that she's been overdosing herself on immunosuppressant drugs to get through performances and get the lead role. Aya catches up to Melissa in a rehearsal hall, but now Melissa claims to be called Eve. Eve transforms into a disgusting creature, smashing a perfectly good piano along the way. She exclaims that the day for mitochondria to be free has finally arrived. You fight her and she flees to the sewers. When there, she tells Aya that her mitochondria will also awaken soon. She escapes one final time, leaving us to fight a mutated alligator. After defeating the alligator, the introduction to this game is finished. From here, you must evacuate New York, understand your connection to Eve, and stop her from destroying the entire human race by birthing the ultimate being. With a little help from her partner Daniel and a Japanese scientist named Maeda, she begins to understand these links to Eve and the reasons that she herself has parasite powers. This game has a truly fantastic sci-fi horror story and is in fact the sequel to a book with the same name written by a Japanese pharmacologist called Hideaki Seina. Unlike other RPGs of the era, you don't explore the world map, you pick areas to go to from this 3D representation of Manhattan, which has an absolute banger of a tune. Like Resident Evil, you explore a 3D environment with fixed camera angles, finding items. But combat encounters are random, much like many RPGs of the time. Unlike the turn-based combat of most of these RPGs, this is an action RPG. You can freely move around the battlefield waiting for your AT bar to fill. Once your bar's full, you can attack, with most of your damage dealing coming from firearms. You have a handy range dome to make sure your attacks hit, and your parasite powers are used more as support spells. All the weapons you use in this game are real-world firearms, and you can upgrade them using mods, tools, and battle points. Aya's parasite powers are a stand-in for traditional RPG magic, with the old favourites such as heal, haste, slow and confused being available. Aya has mutated mitochondrial DNA, and this is what allows her to use these powers, so it not only fits the battle system, but thematically it fits the story too. Honestly, I can't praise this game enough. Its story and characters, they feel fleshed out and believable. It was genuinely a real treat for me experiencing this, but I can't go into said experience without spoilers for the end of the game. So this is your spoiler warning. Somewhere around the midpoint of the story, Eve breaks into a hospital and steals a vial of artificial sperm to impregnate herself with the ultimate being. Then, when you defeat Eve near the end of the game, you realise it's too late and she's already given birth to the ultimate being. This is where my experience changed. I hadn't really had much of a hard time getting through the game. It was challenging, but not insurmountable. But when I got to the fight with the ultimate being, I hit a giant baby-shaped wall. So I had to admit defeat and go back to a previous save, do some grinding, and level up. Then I went back and I kicked the living shit out of that baby. Strangely, I saw this as a kind of positive. It took me back to my younger days and those RPGs that I loved so much. The only part of this experience that I really considered negative was that it didn't really have a very well defined point of no return. So if you decide to play this game, I would advise making multiple saves, just so you don't lock yourself out from being able to complete the game. In my eyes, this is a must play for anyone who likes RPGs or just a great story in general. If I had played this when it came out, I truly believe that this would be in my top 3 games alongside Resident Evil and Final Fantasy VII. It really is that good. And so with all that said, I'm giving Parasite Eve 5 mitochondria out of 5.